Northwest, KATU presents Town Hall. Tonight on Town Hall, are you scared of Old Town? Should you be?
Well, we asked you if you had needles. You're supposed to tell us.
You may think you know what's going on in Old Town, but you've never seen it like this. It's the dark side of Portland in a whole new light. We're on location inside Old Town, tonight on Town Hall.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Jeff Gianola, and welcome to a very special Town Hall. We're broadcasting from Old Town, the heart of Old Town, and behind me we've gathered about 100 people. These are citizens like you, except many of these folks live and work here in Old Town. When you hear the words Old Town, what do you think about? Some people think about crime, others think about dirty streets, others think about drug deals. But you know, this is a very diverse neighborhood. For instance, I want to show you something. Right behind me here is one of the best restaurants, not only in the city, but in the state. And it's located right in the heart of Old Town. Now, directly across the street, we have the Estate Hotel. This is a hotel where people who are trying to put their lives back together, drug addicts and alcoholics, put their lives back together. They're residents of this neighborhood. They're residents of Old Town. Now let's walk out to the corner of 3rd and Cooch right here, and I want to show you another side of Old Town. You've probably seen this if you visited Old Town or have driven through here. Right across the street, people just hanging out. You see their belongings in a shopping cart. Many of these people are homeless. Some are living in shelters here. The streets of Old Town are their home. The business that used to be there moved out 2 years ago. He got sick and tired of running these people out of his establishment. He said it was driving away customers. Now, I'm standing in the middle of Old Town in the middle of the daytime. Some people say it's a lot scarier at nighttime. Here's a look at Old Town through the eyes of a Portland police officer.
Well, I think it's a reality check for Middle America to come down to Old Town. It's a constant reminder to me of the struggles that people have in their lives, is coming down to Old Town and seeing people who are struggling. But it doesn't mean it's a bad place. See, there's vomit down here, bottles, old food wrappers, people urinate down here, it stinks down here. It's a challenge down here. There are a lot of challenges that we have to face that are all over. Was that a bunch of policemen running? Yeah. Can we stop for a minute? I need to go.
Shirt on.
Was he a buyer or seller? We watched a drug dealer from a hidden location. We were able to watch a drug dealer and a drug buyer do their deal. So officers responded. That was that group of policemen who went running by me. We caught them up at 4th and Everett. This is the Union Gospel Mission. It's a little bit after 9 o'clock. We end up with a kind of a conflict here. You get the Union Gospel Mission taking people in, then you have the ministry's van here feeding people, and then these folks sit here and eat, but then they don't do anything with their garbage or with their leftover food. They just kind of throw it on the sidewalk. So we end up with really kind of a mess down here. And this takes place all the time. Like the man down the street who was laying on his blanket camped out on the sidewalk, he's waiting to get in to the gospel mission to spend the night. This is another problem that we have down here, is these chains were originally put in because of all the derelicts and alcoholics who used to frequent Old Town. And so if somebody was drunk and stumbling down the street, the theory being they wouldn't fall into traffic in the middle of Burnside. Well, part of the problem is these drug dealers that hang out down here do this, and they sit here and swing and just hang out and loiter and whatnot. And that's not what it's there for. So what we're trying to do is work with another city bureau to get these removed, taken out of here. So the poles will still be here. If somebody staggers, they can hang on to it, or if they fall or whatnot. But there's no chain for a makeshift swing. Isn't she the gal that OD'd in our office?
Yeah.
Okay. The system's broken. There's no doubt in my mind the system does not work. We're out here. I think we're doing our job, but when we arrest offenders, they don't stay in jail. So what do? They come back and they commit the same crime, more of the same crime, over and over, and it's just the recidivism. It overwhelms us. And for every little problem that happens, people think that you just pick up the phone and call the police. And our concept of community policing calls on people to get involved, be involved, and stay involved. Let's see if we can't spot a dope deal going on. That's the luxury of driving this car, is a lot of times these yardbirds are so whacked they don't notice me until the last minute. So is that your car? We want people to feel safe. We want to lessen people's fear of crime. But at the same time, we don't want to take that fear of crime away, because fear of crime can be a good thing. It makes them lock their cars, it makes them lock their homes, it makes them look out for each other. So fear of crime is a good thing. We just want to minimize it.
That's a view of Old Town through the eyes of a Portland police officer at night. What did you think? Is Old Town safe? Here are the folks gathered for town hall. Many enforce the law here. Many work here. Many live here. And I want to pose that question right now to the crowd. Is Old Town safe? Who wants to pick that up? Yes, sir. Stand, please.
I'm Chuck Curry with Burnside Advocates Group, and the answer is no. Old Town is not a safe place. Just a week ago, I walked out of a restaurant in Old Town and found a man lying in a puddle of blood, his own blood. He'd been stabbed in a drug deal. We don't have the resources or the money to house people, to give them the kind of alcohol and drug treatment they need. And at the same time, we've also ghettoized Old Town. We've put too many social service agencies into this neighborhood, when instead we should be spreading the problem out. And when you have such a high concentration of people who live in poverty, you're naturally going to have some of the evils that come along with it.
Okay, Chuck says it isn't safe. Who agrees with that? Is Old Town safe? Raise your hand. Is Old Town a safe area? If you come down here. In the back there, let me get back there. Your name is Old Town safe?
Yes, it is. It's actually as safe as a person makes it. Because if you go walking around Old Town thinking, yeah, you're bad, you're not going to be bad, because they're going to put you down.
Let's hear from a business owner. There's a lot of business owners here. I see Darcelle right here. Very colorful figure. Darcelle, is Old Town safe? Besides the makeup, you're a business person, or businessman, businesswoman.
But be careful.
Is it safe?
Old Town is absolutely safe if you know what you're doing. Come to Old Town. The man here from the agency just said somebody was bleeding outside of a doorway. Was that man in the area? Was that man a customer coming to our place or to the KATU Fish House, or was he one of the dope dealers? You see what I'm saying? We get people, thousands of people a month come to our place, and they never have a problem. They know what they're doing. They walk into the area, they drive in the area, and they come into our place. I believe that this man was talking about a local problem, maybe a dope deal gone wrong.
I don't know, Darcelle. The folks at home are saying, hey, we drive by. I'm not sure if it's safe. Let me introduce our hot seat guests, our town hall hot seat. First, we have Gene DeMaster from Burnside Projects. Thanks for being here, Gene. We have Debbie Wood from Central City Concern. We have Commander Roy Kendrick from the Portland Police Central Precinct. Dave Beebe from the INS Immigration Service. Al Jasper and Lou Walksmith, both local restaurant owners. And Lou, I'm going to go to you right here, Lou. Is Old Town safe?
Well, I believe our part is. I'm a property owner, actually.
Your part is located where?
South of Burnside on Ankeny and 2nd Street. And we've made some big changes in our neighborhood. A few of us business owners, including Mr. Atwood here and myself, fought against the social agencies and won a major victory. We got the restriction of liquor sales in our neighborhood. And by restricting the liquor sales, these people have left our area, and our neighborhood is very clean and very safe.
Let's go to another Al Jasper, Marco Polo Restaurant.
Yes, I say that Old Town is a very safe place. I think that we can't deny that there is some problems and that there is some violence on the streets of Old Town, but I think that if you check the records, most of the violence is not to the public at large. Most of the violence is perpetrated from somebody that is up to evil things, but the victim is generally down here up to no good, and the violence is perpetrated by other evil people.
Okay, I'm taking the point of a viewer at home watching this, saying, okay, you're business owners. Of course you're going to say it's safe. Darcelle, you're going to say it's safe. But Darcelle, you said something about drugs in Old Town. Raise your hand if you believe drugs is a problem in Old Town. Now look at all these hands. Would anyone agree that an area where drugs is a problem possibly could be unsafe? Officer?
I think you have to put into perspective what we're talking about with safe and unsafe. If you're an average citizen who comes to Old Town to take advantage of all the culture, the food, the history of this town, and that's your purpose here, you are a pretty safe individual. The problem is if you're a drug dealer, if you're a buyer or a seller, or if you're down here to rob somebody, then you're not safe. Most of the crime that we have that's violent crime is committed by drug dealers against drug sellers and other people who are down here involved in criminal activity.
Who's a business owner here who has a problem with drugs, people selling drugs outside their establishment? Please stand. Your name?
My name is Mike Roberts, Old Town Cafe.
And we frequently have drug deals on the corner. Drug dealers come into my business. Drug dealers and drug buyers go into my bathrooms. They use my bathrooms to deal drugs, to use drugs. In the last year, we've been responsible through community policing efforts of arresting about 20 people for felony drug charges inside my business.
Who are the people that are dealing drugs here in Old Town? Who are? Anyone want to pick that up? Do we know who the people are dealing drugs here in Old Town, or is it just everybody? You can't say everybody's dealing drugs. No. Yes, ma'am? Stan?
My name's Claudia Coulter. I work at Outreach Ministry, and I also live at the Estate Hotel. I'm in a recovery program there. A majority of the people that live here don't really deal drugs. A lot of the people that come in here are people that come from the other side of the river. They bus up here, they'll stay here for the day, or they'll come early in the morning, and they'll leave. They're not part of our community.
Jeff?
Yes.
If you look at the statistics, which I don't happen to have, but I've seen them many times, I think that you'll find that the drug dealers, the seller, on the part of the seller, tends to predominantly be people who have come into the area from the outside, both the buyers and the sellers, as she just stated. Neither one of them are part of Old Town. They come here to do their business, both the sellers and the buyer. If you look at the percentages of arrests of drug sellers in particular, you will find a very high, unfortunately, a very high number of Hispanics. And of that group, you will find an unusually high number of illegal aliens. And that's a fact that has to be addressed.
Let me talk to one of the officers there. Your name, please?
Sergeant Jim Ferreira, Central Precinct.
Jim, if an undocumented alien is standing on the corner, let's say of 3rd and Cooch here, you catch him dealing drugs, what happens to that person?
We take him into custody, process him through the Multnomah County booking facility, and they're charged with a felony drug offense, and they go to court.
Do you let the Immigration Service know that this person is undocumented?
At this point, we have a policy that we're working on to communicate that information to the Immigration Service.
Let's go to our immigration man, Mr. Beebe.
Yes. It's true that the Immigration Service plays a key role here in Old Town insofar as we have undocumented aliens in the United States dealing drugs. The apprehension and removal of deportation of criminal aliens remains the INS's #1 interior enforcement priority. And to give you some sense of the magnitude of the problem as we see it in the state of Oregon this year, we will formally deport in excess of 1,200 illegal aliens, virtually all of whom have been tried and convicted in state court for either the possession or the distribution of controlled substances.
But this is really a political hot potato. And Darcelle, as a business owner, what do you want to say about it? Because folks at home watching this are saying, if someone, whether they're from the moon undocumented, whether they're from another country, if they're doing something illegal, should they be deported?
Do they have to wait until they have a felony conviction before they're deported? You don't deport people if they're illegal. If I do something illegal in my club, I have the OLCC on me right away. They don't wait until I'm arrested.
We have had to necessarily prioritize the way that we use our detention and removal dollars allocated by or appropriated by the Congress of the United States. Clearly, no INS office anywhere in this nation has the resources to deport anyone, everyone in the United States merely for being here illegally. Your point is well taken. But to the extent that we don't have sufficient dollars to deport everyone, we of necessity have had to prioritize the way we use it, and we've done so by identifying criminal aliens as our first enforcement priority.
Do you wish there was a better working relationship with Portland Police?
I'd like to say that we've enjoyed an outstanding working relationship with Portland Police for probably the last 8 or 10 years.
But then what happened?
I would say that our working relationship today is being redefined.
Officer?
I think it's important to understand that part of the problems in Old Town with the drug dealers and being of Hispanic descent and from Mexico, and many of them undocumented, is not just an Old Town problem. It's part of a national issue that this country hasn't dealt with an immigration policy and an enforcement policy. This community right now, and many of the members that are here are part of a committee from Old Town that has put together a proposal which will go to the Chief of Police, INS, the District Attorney, and the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office on how we can work together, respect people's rights, and respect the law, and help deal with the problem of illegal aliens in Old Town.
I also want to really say that the issue of what the racial or language or whatever background of a drug dealer is really a red herring. And if we spend a lot of time worrying about that, we don't define the real problem. The real problem in this community is the fact that people use and buy drugs and that there's not enough treatment and other resources available. If we solve the problem of people coming undocumented from Mexico tomorrow, there would be a different group of people dealing drugs in this neighborhood and in every other neighborhood in the country. We need to talk about effective solutions and really care about what happens in the whole issue of buying and selling drugs, and what country the people come from, whether they're documented or not documented, would then take care of itself. And it's not an issue of whether the people are Hispanic or not Hispanic. It's a question of whether they're drug dealers or not drug dealers.
Okay, we talk about drugs there for a moment, and we're going to take a break right now. We've talked about drugs and whether the streets of Old Town are safe. You can't talk about Old Town without talking about the homeless problem. Some folks say some of the agencies just enable the homeless to stay on the streets of Old Town. Others say that's not the case at all. We'll explore that issue when Town Hall continues. Stay with us. Welcome back to Town Hall. We're broadcasting this evening from the center of Old Town, 3rd and Cooch, and we're talking about some of the problems in Old Town and some of the solutions to those problems. And let's talk about homelessness. We haven't talked about that. A lot of folks at home watching this, they come down to eat at a restaurant, they start to go in the restaurant, and they see people hanging out outside the restaurant, some of the homeless people. And that scares a lot of folks at home. Maybe it doesn't scare a lot of you who live and work here and are used to it, but it scares a lot of our viewers at home. They don't want that when they go to a restaurant. And I'm going to go to one of our restaurant owners. Has that been a problem at your particular restaurant, Don?
Well, in the first place, I'm out of the restaurant business now, but I still am the landlord in that of the Oyster Bar restaurant on the other side of Burnside. And again, I'd say that our area has improved quite a bit due to the fact that we restricted the liquor sales. And I'd say the word homeless, I think, is a phony term. I think we realize that it's a big term that you put 10 categories of people into, and it's not a fair term at all. The people who cause trouble down here are basically we used to call the lazy drunks. And those people are still down here, or the people who don't want to become part of society, the people who don't want to work. And our problem mainly is with those kind of people, what to do with them.
What do you tell customers, other business owners, what do you tell customers who show up maybe at your establishment and say, you know, I just don't like coming down there anymore? I don't like coming down to your establishment. It just scares me. What do you tell customers like that? Sherwood, you're a restaurant owner. What do you tell folks like that? Go ahead and stand up.
Well, we're fortunate here at Cooch Street because we have a parking lot, and people pull into the parking lot, get out of their car, and walk into the restaurant. That's an advantage that we have, but we have people that are hanging around. We have to wash down the sidewalks and things like that to keep them moving, but that's the only, but other restaurants have another problem.
Huh,
But
that's an interesting point of view. Anyone
Jeff,
over
I
here?
think that's
Jean?
I think it's a real unfair portrayal, because a number of the people that are on the streets and hanging around, they're not homeless people at all. They live in other parts of Portland, and they come down here to prey on homeless people and prey on people that go to those restaurants. They're not homeless, and we need to recognize that. Secondly, many people who are homeless stay inside shelters or stay inside transitional housing, and they also want those people off the streets. They need to be protected from people that are hanging out on the streets. Most people in Old Town who are homeless, they don't want to be in Old Town, and they don't want to be homeless. And it's very unfair to blame this problem on the homeless.
You wouldn't deny, Gene, that sometimes, though, you go to a restaurant, folks who aren't familiar with this area, they're scared by it when they see folks hanging outside. And are you saying they just assume those people are homeless?
I'm saying they assume that they're homeless because they're in Old Town, and they aren't homeless. They get on buses and they get in cars and they drive to other parts of the city where they live. They come down here to prey on people, and we need to recognize that homeless people want to get out of the Old Town area as much as anybody else.
Jeff?
Yes.
from my perspective also, I think that she's right on that point. I think that the homeless, the real homeless, are harmless. The actual homeless people are victimized out on the streets, and they become victims of the problem, not really perpetrators of the problem.
We got a question in the back over on that side. Keep your hand up there for a moment till we get a microphone over there. And go ahead and stand up. Your name?
I'm Yasha Pander. I'm with Key Largo Restaurant. I've heard from several different sources here, people saying the drug dealers come from outside, the people preying on the homeless people come from outside. What I would like to know is, when these people are identified, are the police following these people out of the area? Is there plainclothes activity to identify these people?
A good question to one of our officers. Go ahead.
I think when you're talking about homeless people and victims in the drug dealing, I think that the comments about people coming from outside is correct. From a police standpoint, if you look at crime statistics, and that includes people who live here or people who come from outside, our crime statistics for July, 3 robberies, 5 assaults. That's the same as Goose Hollow. And of course, you can't compare this area with Goose Hollow.
You have a lot more police officers in this particular area.
A lot more police officers, but let me go one step further. The number of car prowls, cars broken into in this neighborhood, were 13. Goose Hollow was 29. So if you're looking at crime in Old Town, what you're really talking about is fear of crime. And what people fear most are what we call order maintenance crimes. And it's panhandling, it's people who are asleep or people who are passed out on the street who are not a threat to people coming down to Old Town to enjoy Old Town.
Hold the applause just for a second. I'm holding a book here. Many of you have seen this. It's called A Nation in Denial, The Truth About Homelessness. And we have the authors here, Alice Baum and Donald Burns, if you could please stand. And you're the authors of this book. And what is the truth about homelessness, Alice?
The truth about homelessness is that homeless people are more often than not solely victims of poverty and economic distress, as many would like us to believe, but are terribly troubled and terribly sick people. They suffer from the physiological diseases of mental illness, which is a brain disorder, alcoholism, and drug addiction. These are treatable conditions. However, when they are left untreated, in fact, people enter into a downward spiral that that dissociate them from normal networks of helping systems.
And they can, in some people's eyes, then just hang around on the streets and maybe ruin an area like Old Town?
What is remarkable about what's going on in Portland, and we've heard it already today, there are programs in the city of Portland to help the people we call homeless. We've heard the term recovery used today. We've heard about the hotel across the street, which is a recovery hotel. It is possible to help people who live on the streets and in shelters, who suffer from alcoholism, drug addiction, and or mental illness, to treat those illnesses and to move them in a progression to sober housing, structured housing if they're mentally ill, and on into jobs. In fact,
okay, he asked a question in the back here, Don, and maybe you can answer that. The folks at home couldn't hear it, but a gentleman said, where were these places 15 years ago? Now, you traveled to different cities. You saw some of these programs. Where were these? Were there anything like this 15 years ago? Was there anything like this?
In most communities and in Portland, those kinds of opportunities did not exist 15 years ago. In most communities today, those opportunities do not exist. And the exciting thing about Portland is that, in fact, Portland is trying to address the problem. One of the things that we would like to communicate in terms of the nature of the problem in Old Town is there is very little here in comparison with cities like San Francisco, New York, Washington, Chicago. The kinds of crime statistics that the officer just cited, they're magnitudes different in some other cities. This city is doing some very exciting things to address those problems, which most other cities across the country have not gotten to yet.
Also, let me add a note about panhandling. Panhandling has become good business in this country. And people have learned from the homeless, from people who really are down on their luck, who are sick, who can be helped, that if there was compassion 10 years ago, there are many people who hold up signs now saying, I'm hungry and homeless, will work for food. In fact, a study was recently done in New Haven, Connecticut. A majority of the panhandlers in that city were not homeless, really echoing what is being said here today, that much of what people perceive of as crime, as panhandling, as street distractions in Old Town come from outside. Portland is remarkable in trying to help people who normally we think of as the homeless move on a continuum to health, sober housing, progression in their own recovery system so they can start working and become part of this community again.
Okay, Alice and Don say, hey, here in Portland, it's not so bad. Here in Portland, it's not so bad. Let me get the microphone over there, and if you could identify yourself.
Betty Jean Lee, the Chinese American Citizens Alliance. Old Town is also Chinatown. We've been talking about the negative things about this area. I'd like to bring out the fact that Chinatown is in this area and the good points, the culture, the food, and Chinese school. There is a Chinese school right on Davis between 3rd and 4th. And there's a lot of culture, and I think we should think about some of the positive things.
Absolutely, from the standpoint of, we were talking about a lot of businesses, but we have to respect the fact that this is also a neighborhood, and people live and work here, and there's cultural centers here as well. We heard a lot about homelessness. We didn't hear from a lot of people who've actually been there, recovering alcoholics, people who were once on the street and now have found their way. We're going to hear some of those stories when Town Hall continues. Stay with us. Welcome back to Town Hall, and we're broadcasting from Portland's Old Town District. We've been talking about some of the problems and some of the solutions to those problems, and it occurred to me that everybody views their surroundings differently. And earlier in the broadcast, we took a look at Old Town through the eyes of a Portland police officer at night. I want you to take another view, the view of Old Town, a brighter view from the eyes of Debbie Wood.
I think a lot of people think of Old Town as being a grim place, a place of despair and of fear. And that's not the Old Town I see. I see an Old Town of hope and dignity, of opportunities. I see Old Town that has a lot of people who are in alcohol and drug recovery and a sense of community about that. I see a community that's full of sparkle and life and diversity and texture. It's a community that's different than any other part of Oregon, and it's the best part of Oregon. One of the things that happens in this community is people hang out on the street. That doesn't mean that every person who hangs out on the street is going to harm somebody. So you have to be an optimist to do what I do for a living. I have lived in downtown and worked in this neighborhood for 4 years, and I have never had an incident happen in which I felt I was in any kind of danger. What I've learned in this neighborhood is that I'm much more likely to be hugged by a friend than mugged by a stranger. There are a lot of problems, and I think we have to be honest about problems, because you can't solve problems unless you're honest about them. The worst thing that can happen in this neighborhood is when people get ignored or treated as less than human beings. Hi there. Hi. He lives in the Foster Hotel that we just bought.
Apartments.
Yeah, apartments, excuse me, you're right.
Foster apartments.
That's right. Other people in Old Town see the street alcoholics and addicts and the problems that they face. What I get to see are the changes that people make in Old Town. I get to see recovery. One of the examples of that is the Sally McCracken building, where we have 95 formerly homeless addicts and alcoholics living clean and sober lives. A year and a half after it opened, 70% of these street alcoholics and addicts are clean and sober. It's part of what's right about Old Town. I get to see what works. And it's seeing what works that makes this neighborhood work for me.
That's the view of Old Town through the eyes of Debbie Wood. And Debbie, I'm going to go to you for a quick question here. You live here, you know the people here. The folks at home are saying, that's great, but you know, I come to Old Town and I'm still scared.
What I'd like to say is that you have a responsibility to take care of yourself. You have a responsibility to look around, and if you're not feeling comfortable where you are, cross the street. You don't have to walk into a situation you don't feel comfortable with. I also believe we have sort of the most terminally polite panhandlers in America, and I like to say that, you know, every woman who's in Old Town hears graphic compliments on her appearance, and it means that you know you could have a date.
But you have
that
some
doesn't
people
mean you're going to be hurt.
But you have some people saying, I don't want to be bothered. It makes me very uncomfortable to come down to Old Town knowing that someone's going to ask me for money.
Just say no.
Just say no. Just tell the panhandlers no.
The other thing is you have the ability to say no, and if the reason you're not coming to Old Town is because you're afraid someone says, can you give me a quarter? And when you say no, they walk away. And you give up the best restaurants in town, the art galleries, the entertainment, the things to do, the liveliness of this community, because you're afraid that somebody might come up and ask you for a quarter. You have the right to make that choice, but that's sure not the choice that I make.
Okay, you talk to a lot of people every day who are homeless. I want to talk to some of those folks. Raise your hand here if you currently live in Old Town and you're homeless. Maybe you're staying at a shelter. You in the back, sir, your name, please stand.
Greg Reber. I'm homeless because of the spotted owl. I'm a Korean vet, which, you know, it took 40 years for you people to recognize this. You call it a police action, I call it a war. I joined.
That's a whole nother town hall. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay.
What about this issue of Old Town? And folks,
well,
I see you on the street. I might be a little bit afraid if I didn't know you. I see you on the street.
I've had a couple of years special forces, and people are afraid of me sometimes because I do karate and let them know that I can protect myself. Anyway, I disagree with her 100% because I mean, I had all the good things. I had a share in a plywood mill. I had 2 kids. I had a swimming pool in my backyard. I had a party room. I had a beautiful home.
In economic times, you're out of a job.
Right. Well, the spotted owl got me out of a job, and I lost my share and lost everything.
Okay. Anyone else here homeless? Right here, sir. You here?
My name is Richard. I've been a resident of Portland, Oregon for 51 years, and I was homeless because of my alcohol addiction. And I finally came to admit to myself that I was an alcoholic, and I